This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Speaking about how excited people are not to have Tisha B'Av ever, we're going to speak today about the opinion of Rabbi. The Gemara says that Rabbi wanted to be Oiker Tisha B'Av. Rabbi wanted to uproot Tisha B'Av. Now, any rabbi who tried doing that will probably have many available stellars for him who would be very happy to employ such a Rav. We're going to speak about the halachic ramifications of Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos. There are a number of very interesting nafkaminas with Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos. Let's start in an interesting way. Let's begin sort of in the middle. And that is, we know there's a famous tshuva of Rav Moshe where even though the Shulchan Aruch does not mention the prohibition of shaving during the entirety of the 3 weeks, but we know that is minhag Ashkenaz. Minhag Ashkenaz is we don't take haircuts and we don't shave for the entirety of the 3 weeks. That's not mentioned in the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't say that we don't shave for the whole Bein HaMetzarim, but that's the minhag of Ashkenazim. It's a minhag mentioned in the Ramah. It's not mentioned by the Mechaber. However, what is mentioned in the Gemara is Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av, the week in which Tisha B'Av comes out, and that's very important. While we endeavor to fulfill the Iraisas, the Rabbanans, Minhagim, and Gutta Zachin, I think the biggest lacking in our generation is that everything's a melting pot, where the Iraisa and Minhag gets mixed up. People don't know what is a Minat Torah, what is Midrabanan, what is a Minhag, what is a Skula. Everything sort of gets mixed together. So, not shaving during the 3 weeks is Minhag Yisrael. Not shaving during Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av is Dina de Gemara. What's the difference? The difference is, Rav Moshe writes that if somebody has an issue with their livelihood, somebody's livelihood is dependent on being groomed, so then during the 3 weeks there may be a dispensation to be able to shave. But during Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av is a much more serious matter because it's mentioned in the Gemara. So the question then would be, this week, this year, where Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, when is Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av? Are we now in the Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av, and in that case one would not have this heter for Parnasa? Or do we say, this year, but even though Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, but it's pushed off to Sunday. If it's pushed off to Sunday, this then is not Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av. And that's a very important nafkamina. And let's take a look in the Shulchan Aruch. And in order to get to the bottom of this issue, we really have to know how to read a mechaber. The Shulchan Aruch in Archaim Siman Tav Kuf Nun Aleph Sif Daled. He says like this: La'achar, number 7. La'achar atainis, after Tisha B'Av, mutter l'saper. You're allowed to take a haircut, or l'chabes, and to do laundry miyad, immediately. Now, by the way, that's midina the Gemara. Our minhag is we wait until chatzos the next day, and this year, not necessarily, because this year we're fasting on the 10th. V'imchal Tisha B'Av b'yom rishon. If Tisha B'Av comes out on Sunday, oy b'Shabbos v'nidcha la'achar Shabbos, mutter b'shtei HaShabbosos. Both weeks are mutter. You're allowed to take a haircut immediately after. You're allowed to do laundry immediately after. And the week before, bein shekoyim atainis bein shachrav. And this week you could take a haircut. And this week you could do laundry. Meaning, there is no Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av. The Shita of the Mechaber in the first day, and by the way, this is the Shita of the Rosh. The Rosh Shita is, this year there is no such thing as Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av. Not the week after Tisha B'Av, and not the week before Tisha B'Av. Why? But Shabbos is Tisha B'Av. No, Shabbos is not Tisha B'Av. Sunday is Tisha B'Av. That's the first day. V'yesh mi shaymer, and there are those who say shenagu lasar, that the minhag is to aser kol shvuah shalafan of the week before chutz miyam hevi yom vav, except for Thursday and Friday l'kavet Shabbos. So we have a machlokes. This is from the Sefer HaMitzvahs. The Rosh holds there's no Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av, and then the Sefer HaMitzvah says there is Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av. What's the machlokes? What does it depend on? So I'm going to tell you an interesting thing. The Gemara Megillah on Daf Hey Amud Beis says there was a man by the name of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. The Gemara says Bikesh Rabbi Lakar Tisha B'Av. Rabbi wanted to uproot Tisha B'Av. V'loi hoidu loi chachamim. The rabbis did not agree with him. So the Gemara asks, what? He wanted to uproot Tisha B'Av? The Gemara says no. It was Tisha B'Av shechali yois Shabbos. And they were pushing it off to Sunday. So Rabbi says, once you're pushing it off, just get rid of it entirely. Why are you making problems with the calendar? Once you push off Tisha B'Av to Sunday, get rid of it completely. That was the Shita of Rabbi. And the Chachamim said, no, you're pushing it off, you push it off to Sunday. That means in the view of Rabbi, how do we view Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos? That it's Be'ikr, it comes out on Shabbos. Elamai, we have to push it off. Rabbi says there's no such thing as Yud. Why would you fast on Yud? Nothing happened on Yud. So Rabbi wanted to get rid of it entirely. That means Rabbi fundamentally holds it's the 9th or bust. But there's another shita. There's a Gemara Masechta Tainis, Chavtes Amud Beis. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amali Hayisi Hasam. If I would have been around when they enacted Tisha B'Av, I would have made Tisha B'Av on the 10th. Why? Because we have to know historically. The 9th, when we go to shul and we sit on the floor and we say Eicha, what happened historically? Absolutely nothing. Nothing happened. And in the morning when we sit on the floor and we cry and we say Kinnos, what happened? Also nothing. And then during the afternoon when there's a mitzvah to watch movies the whole day, right? Everyone's going to this video and that video and all these films that became like the mitzvahs hayoim, right? What happened then historically? Nothing happened. And when we daven mincha, what happened? Oh, finally, between mincha and Maariv, they set fire to the heichal. But Ruba Shel Heichal burnt on the 10th. So Rabbi Yochanan says, if I would have been there, I would have made Tisha B'Av on the 10th. V'Rabbanan, why do the rabbis hold we make Tisha B'Av on the 9th? Eschalta de paranusa adifa. The beginning of the paranus is more chamor. And the Chassam Sofer explains, alumdus, that it says, Bo pritzim chilaluhu. That once the Goyim set fire to the Beis HaMikdash, it became profane. The Kedusha left. So the truth is on the 10th, sticks and stones were burning. It wasn't a holy edifice anymore. It was only holy on the 9th. So the Rabbanan hold the Iker Tisha B'Av, the main tragedy is when they set fire. But Rabbi Yochanan says no. The majority of the temple burnt down on the 10th. If I would have been around, I would have made Tisha B'Av on the 10th. The big kasha on Rabbi Yochanan is, if you had been around, nobody would have asked your opinion. Because you're an Amoira, and Tisha B'Av was legislated by the Nevi'im. So if the Nevi'im decide when Tisha B'Av is, why would you even have had a deo when Tisha B'Av should be? That's the kasha, the Minchas Chinuch. But be it as it may, Rabbi Yochanan would have wanted to establish Tisha B'Av on the 10th. Not like Rebbe. Rebbe's of the opinion it's the 9th or bust. So if it falls out on Shabbos and you can't push it off, you're not going to push it off to Sunday, Rabbi says get rid of it. Rabbi Yochanan says no, the Iker day is Tisha B'Av, meaning according to Rabbi Yochanan, finally on a year like this, you have a real Tisha B'Av. According to Rabbi Yochanan, this year Tisha B'Av is a darf tzazayna Tisha B'Av. So it comes out, there's a chakira of how you could view Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos that's pushed off to Sunday. Do we view it that really Tisha B'Av is the 9th, Elamai, Sunday's makeup day? Or do we view it, since it can't come out on Shabbos, it's l'chatchila scheduled for Sunday? I'll give you an example. Lahavdil elef alfei avdalos. There's a game where you have a guy who's been training for, 17 years, to take a little round object and throw it 100 miles an hour, 90 feet, or less than 90 feet, 60 feet. And then you have a guy standing by a square, or a diamond, who's been injected with racehorse hormones, who has such powerful eyesight that these hormones allow him to see a little thing, ki'ilu it's like a big beach ball. And even though the bull's traveling 99 miles an hour, but he's so juiced up that to him it's moving like a very slow thing, and he could hit the ball out of the park. The problem is it rains. It rained. So all these 50,000 Mishugayim who are wasting at least 7 hours of their lives to get to this place, to stay there and to get home, when are they going to, they miss the game. So we say, do they get to use this ticket to come back on another day? So the answer is that the halacha is they get to make it up, not the next day, not the next game, but whenever the makeup for that day is, they get to use that ticket for the game that they missed. In other words, there's going to be another game that's a tashlumin for the game that they missed. So the pshat is it was be'ikr scheduled on a Sunday, and on some random Tuesday in August, you get to use that ticket and... Or is the pshat, no, sometimes if we know in advance about the weather, the game was never scheduled for that day. That's the chakira. So how do we paskin? Right? Lahavdil, okay? Forget the example. If you need to explain it to somebody, I never use that mashal. Just what people tell me. Okay? So the shaila is Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos. Do we view it that it came out on Shabbos and Sunday is makeup, or do we view it that it was scheduled l'chatchila for Sunday? The nafkamina would be, if it's scheduled l'chatchila for Sunday, there's no shvua shechal by Tisha B'Av, because this week is not the week in which Tisha B'Av comes out. This year Tisha B'Av doesn't come out on Shabbos, it comes out on Sunday. Or do we view it, no, Tisha B'Av really is Shabbos. It's just we can't observe it then, so we're going to push it back to Sunday. But push it up to Sunday, but there is a shvua shechal by Tisha B'Av. Nafkamina being, is there shvua shechal by Tisha B'Av? So there are two opinions in the Mechaber. The Rosh holds there is no shvua shechal by Tisha B'Av, and then the Sefer HaMitzvah, the second day holds there is shvua shechal by Tisha B'Av. How do we paskin? So he said, I don't know. There are two opinions in the Mechaber. You have to know how to read the Shulchan Aruch. The Mechaber says both weeks are mutter. And then he says, Yesh Misha Oimer. We know there's a principle that we don't paskin like a Yesh Misha Oimer. A Yesh Misha Oimer is a minority view. That means the Mechaber is paskining halacha lamaisa. There is no shvua shechal by Tisha B'Av. So for all intents and purposes, this year we got off the hook. There is no week in which Tisha B'Av comes out. Halacha lamaisa. That's how we paskin. That's the first nafkamina. Meaning the chakira is, do we view it Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, pushed off to Sunday? No! We view it that this year Tisha B'Av comes out on Sunday. That's nafkamina number one. Nafkamina number two. What's the halacha if a person lo yaleinu loses a relative on Yom Tif, and the avelus is not going to be until after Yom Tif? So the Avelus begins after Yom Tif. But the question is, what about Dvarim Shavatzina? What about matters that are done in private? Namely, Tashma Shamita. Is Tashma Shamita permitted? Or do we say, well, the Avelus wasn't Chal yet? So the answer is, Lahalacha, the Avel who did not begin the Avelus is Asr B'Tashma Shamita. So the Shaila is, what about this Shabbos, Friday night? You're allowed to bathe, meaning you're allowed to wash your hands. You're allowed to wash your feet on the Shabbos. I'm talking about on Shabbos. You're allowed to wash your hands regularly. You don't have to wash up to your knuckles. You're allowed to, if you go on Shabbos, no comment. For those who go on Shabbos, their poskim say you could go on Shabbos. But the Mishnah Berurah says that during the 9 days, if you don't go every single week, even if you miss sometimes because you're not feeling well, unless you never miss, you can't go during the 9 days. That's what the Mishnah Berurah says. To the mikvah during the 9 days. If somebody goes every single week, they could go during the 9 days. Somebody misses, Mishnah Berurah says, so miss this week. The question is, what about Tashma Shamita this Friday night? You're allowed to wear shoes, you're allowed to eat, you're allowed to drink. So you would think Tashma Shamita is mutter. On the other hand, it's Dvarim Shabbatzina. The halacha is if somebody was an Avel on Yom Tif, Tashma Shamita would be Asr. So what about Tashma Shamita this Shabbos? L'chayra, it should depend on our Chakira. If really Tisha B'Av is Shabbos, Elamai it's pushed off to Sunday, so we can't not eat, we can't not drink, we can't not wear shoes, because that's Dvarim B'Farhesia. But Dvarim Shabbatzina should be Noyeg, and there would be an Isser Tashma Shamita. But if we view it that when Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, then it's scheduled for Sunday, then Shabbos is not Tisha B'Av, and Tashma Shamita should be Mutter. So let's take a look in the Rush. The Rush quotes a Tosefta, Chal Liyois Tisha B'Av b'Shabbos. If Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, by the way, this Shabbos, you're allowed to eat meat?
Yep.
Yeah. Do you need to curtail anything? No. Are you allowed to curtail? You're not allowed to. Oichel Adam Kol Tzarkai. You can eat whatever you need. Umala al shulchanai afilu kesudas shloimoi b'shaitai. If let's say you're used to eating 18 types of herring by Shalosh Shudas, and once in a while you only have 15, this Shabbos you can't only have 15. You got to give it the full enjoyment. Einoi mainea atzmoi klum. Says the Rosh, that implies Eino nimna merachitza, you don't have to stop washing. The sicha, v'tash meshamita, everything is mutter. Ve'ein sarach linag dorm shel tzina, even personal matters are permitted. By the way, this is the Rosh l'shitase. The Rosh who holds in the Mechaber, Archaim Sim Tavkov Nanav Sif Dalid, that there's no Shvur Shechabay Tisha B'Av, because we view it that Tisha B'Av is scheduled for Sunday. He holds that what? Tashmish Shamita is mutter. It's not Tisha B'Av Friday night. However, the Rosh quotes his Rabbi. Rabbeinu Meir, the Marami Rothenburg. So I was just Zoichet to be in Worms last week. I was at the Marami Rothenburg's kever. Marami Rothenburg writes, he quotes his Rebbe. His Rebbe was the Arzarua, Rabbi Yitzchak Mivina, that he says, the Tisha B'Av Shechal Yos B'Shabbos, Afal Pi She'anu Doichin Oisai Ad L'Machar, even though we push it off to Sunday, Oisai Hayom Aser B'Tashma Shamita. That day, personal matters are aser. Why? Says the Marami Rothenburg in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak Mivina, Midi Dahava Kaver Mesa B'Regav. If somebody buries his relative on Yom Tiv, Afal Pisha Anu Doichin Oisai Ad Lamachar Oisai Yom Oisa Aser B'Tasha Shamita. I'm sorry. Sha'anu Doichin Avilos Ad Acher HaRegel. We push up the Avilos until after the Yom Tov. Afil Hachi Noyig Dvarim Shebetzina B'Regel. Says the Arzarua, just like if somebody loses a relative on Yom Tov and buries a relative on Yom Tov, the Avela starts after Yom Tov, but it's Asr B'Tashma Shamita on Yom Tov, Imkein HaChanami, by Shabbos, Tisha B'Av, so we push off the Avelos, but only Legabe Dvarim Shabbat Dvarim Shabbatzina are Asr. You hear the analogy of the Arzarua? The Arzarua learns that Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos is just like if somebody loses a relative on Yom Tov. The same way if somebody loses a relative on Yom Tov, the Avelos is pushed off, but Dvarim Shabbatzina are observed. On Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos, the Avelos is pushed off, but Dvarim Shabbatzina are observed. The Tisha B'Av, V'Avel Shaychi Hadadi. Tisha B'Av and Avelos are connected. And he brings a raya from the Gemara in Tainis Daf Yud Gimel. What does the Marami Rothenburg have to say about the psak of his Rebbe? This psak emanated from the mouth of my Rebbe. V'chol adas Yisrael yasu oisa. Every Jew must observe it. Kedai hu beis Elokeinu la'abed olav oina achas b'shana. The house of the Rebbeinu Shalom is worthwhile to lose out on one mitzvah of oina of Tashmish Shamita once a year. Meaning, if my Rebbe said it, and my Rebbe compares Tisha B'Av on Shabbos to Avelos on Yom Tov, then we have to observe what he says. The Beis HaMikdash is important enough that we should give up on one oina a year. Says Marami Rothenburg, I don't agree with the argument of my Rebbe. I have what to ask on it, because the truth is, Tisha B'Av is more lenient than regular Avelos, because Tisha B'Av is called Avelos Yeshana, it's an old mourning, as opposed to if somebody loses a relative, it's Avelos Chadasha, so it's not really a good analogy. Maybe only by a new mourning it's so chamor that we don't allow Tasha Shamita on the Yom Tov. But Tisha B'Av, which is Alta Maisa, as they say, it's Avelos Yeshana, so maybe it's not so chamor? No, says the Marami Rothenburg. Nachoin lahachmer kedivri moiri. You should be strict like my Rebbe. Because even when my Rebbe is lenient and I'm strict, where I'm just cautious, we should follow my Rebbe over me. Certainly where my Rebbe is machmir and I'm lenient, you should be machmir like my Rebbe. So the Maram Meir Rothenburg paskins like the Arzarua, that on this Shabbos, what? Tasha Shamita is aser. Comes the Rosh? No! I don't have as much courtesy to my Rebbe as my Rebbe had to his Rebbe. My Rebbe was machnia to his Rebbe, and my Rebbe, Maram Rothenburg, said that even though I don't understand it, what? I hold you should follow my Rebbe because he's the Gadol Adar. Because Kadaihu Beisel Akenu Abel Achas Vashana. But says the Rosh, I'm lenient. It could be like this. The Maram didn't agree with his Rebbe. But if he was his Rebbe, so how could he argue on his Rebbe? But the Rosh doesn't have to be machnia to his Rebbe's hachna to his Rebbe. In other words, if his Rebbe didn't hold its aser, his Rebbe held it was mutter. Just his Rebbe was deferring, the Rosh doesn't have to defer to a deferring. In other words, you have to defer to your Rebbe, but I don't have to defer to someone who deferred to his Rebbe. Maybe. Okay. Be it as it may, what's the machlekes? Why does the Arzarua hold Tashmish Shamita as aser? And the Rosh hold Tashmish Shamita is mutter. So that's the Chakir we've been talking about. The Marami Rotenberg, the Arzarua, views it that really Tisha B'Av is Shabbos. Elamai, you're not allowed to desecrate the Shabbos by open signs of Avelos, but Tasha Shamita is private, so that you have to be Machmer on. The Rosh says, no, don't look at it that way. When Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, it's scheduled for Sunday. This Friday night is nothing. It's a regular Shabbos, and therefore Tasha Shamita is mutter. Now the thing is, these psakim are a little bit of a stira, as you're going to see. Look at number 2, look in the Shulchan Aruch. How do we paskin? We paskin as follows. We paskin in Siman Tav Kuf Nun Dalet Sif Yotes. If Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, it's mutter even b'tash v'shamita. Whose shita is that? The Rosh. Says the Ramah Haga, v'yesh oisrim tash v'shamita. There are those who aser. Who asers? Marami Rutenberg from Rabbi Yitzchak Mivina. How do we paskin? V'chei noyagin. Now, interesting. Wow. He doesn't say v'chei noisrim. It's only a minhag to be machmer. That means as follows. We're basically, on the one hand, we're paskening like the Rosh that there's no Shvuah Shechal by Tisha B'Av, and we're being lenient, and we're saying that this Shabbos is not Tisha B'Av, it's Sunday. But on the other hand, when it comes to Dvarim Shabbatzina, we're taking the other end. And we're saying we're going to be machmir that Tasha Shamita is Aser, but it's not really Aser min adin, it's only a Chumrah. What's the nafkamina? Nafkamina is if Friday night is Leil Tvila, we're Meko. Why are we Meko? Because really we maintain that Tisha B'Av is Sunday. It's just an extra Chumrah. Why are we machmir if we maintain Tisha B'Av as Sunday? Kedaihu beis Elokeinu la'abed olav oina achas b'shana. So this is a very important nafkamina. And the Ksav Sofer writes that this machloikis of whether we're machmir on Friday night or whether we're mekel is dependent on how we view the legislation of Tisha B'Av. Do we view it that it was legislated lechatchila on Sunday as Rabbi Yochanan would view it, because Rabbi Yochanan holds that if I were around I would have made Tisha B'Av lechatchila on Sunday? Or do we view it like Rabbi would view it, that Tisha B'Av is in principle only the 9th or bust, and if you can't observe it on the 9th, we're pushing it off to Sunday? Yeah.
The Rosh does not hold like on his Rebbe. We also have a cloud that a basin cannot reverse prior generation unless it's not only Rebbe. So if the direct sock from his Rebbe, how can he say no?
So we have a rule. It's not a takana here. It's not that the Marami Rotenberg was masakein that it's aser. That was his opinion. It's a matter, he issued an opinion in halacha that it's aser. So you're allowed to argue. You can even argue on your Rebbe. It's not a takana. If the Marami Rotenberg, let's say, made a takana or made a cherem, then the Rosh wouldn't be allowed to unless he felt he was greater. But if he just articulated his perspective, then the Rosh is entitled to argue, even if doesn't view himself greater. Okay, this is a great question. Anyone here born in the month of Av? Yeah? Okay. Anyone here have a birthday on Tisha B'Av? No? Okay. I know I have a friend whose birthday is on Tisha B'Av. You have a grandchild who's born on Tisha B'Av? Okay, I have a nephew who's born on Tisha B'Av.
Bris on Tisha B'Av, that's interesting.
And his third cousin once fasted on Tisha B'Av also, So somebody is born on Tisha B'Av. And now it's his bar mitzvah. And the year of your bar mitzvah, Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos. Excuse me, the new case. Not bar mitzvah on Tisha B'Av. Your bar mitzvah is on Yud Av. Anybody here born on Yud Av? Anyone born on Yud Av? No. Not your grandson. Not your third cousin. Okay. It could happen. It's azazach that you could be born on Yud Av. So you have a guy, his bar mitzvah is on Yud Av. And that year, Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos. And it's pushed off to Sunday, Yud Av. Does the kid have to fast? It depends. If we view it that Tisha B'Av was legislated for that Sunday, he has to fast because he's bar mitzvah. But if we view it that it was legislated for Shabbos, and Sunday is a makeup, Why would the kid have to make up something he wasn't chayiv for in the first place? He wasn't bar mitzvah. So what do you mean? But he was chayiv for chinuch. So let's clarify one of the biggest misnomers in halacha, that many people think that a child needs to fast 3 times before the bar mitzvah. There's absolutely no basis for this. There's no such concept that you have to fast 3 times. Shlomo Zalman would say there are 3 things that people say you have to do 3 times that are all wrong. The first thing that people say you have to do is that if you want to take out a Sefer Torah, you have to read from it 3 times. Where does it say that? It doesn't say that anywhere. The Aruch HaShulchan happens to say it. But Rav Shlomo Zalman, the Mishnah Berurah argues on that. The Rav Shlomo Zalman says you don't have to take it out 3 times. As long as you bring an aron before or leave it there after an aron, you're allowed to take it out. The second thing people say is you have to fast 3 times before you bar mitzvah. No, Mishnah Berurah says there's no chinuch on avelos. How many times does a kid have to fast before the bar mitzvah? 0 times. Except for Yom Kippur, there's a concept of masan and l'shois. So once the kid is 9 years old, he delays his breakfast, and then the next year a little bit more, and the next year a little bit more. But stama, let's say you're going to be bar mitzvah the next day, and it's Shivas B'Tammuz, why would a kid have to fast? No such halacha. Kid doesn't fast before the bar mitzvah. And the third thing is, people think when you come wash for davening, you have to wash your hands 3 times. You only have to wash your hands 3 times for negel vaser. But stam, when you wash your hands for bread or for other things, you only have to wash once. That's a famous thing Rav Shlomo Zalman would say. Anyway, so the nafkamina is you have a kid, his bar mitzvah is Yud Av. And this year, Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos. And Sunday is his bar mitzvah. Does he have to fast? If we view it that Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos and Sunday is the makeup, he doesn't have to make up a day that he wasn't chayiv in. But if we view it, no, the same way we're lenient and we say there's no shvua shecha by Tisha B'Av because it's legislated l'chadchila for Sunday, so this poor kid's going to have to fast because his bar mitzvah is on the day Tisha B'Av was instituted. So, comes the Marsham in Chelek Gimel, Siman Shin Samach Gimel, and he says it depends on our chakira. But lahalacha, what do we paskin? We paskin, there's no Shvur Shechah by Tisha B'Av. That's because Tisha B'Av really big comes out on Sunday. So we're going to be machmer on the kid, and we're going to say you are mechuyev to fast, and that's the halacha. That this year, Tisha B'Av does not come out on Shabbos, it comes out on Sunday. Therefore, it has a leniency that there's no Shvua Shechah by Tisha B'Av, and it has a chumrah that the kid will have to fast. And really, Tashva Shamita should be mutter. And the answer is, fundamentally it is. It's only a chumrah. It's only a chumrah. That is the third nafkamina. Fourth nafkamina. Let's go to the end. Let's say somebody's not feeling well, but not a chayli. He's just chayli ktsas. Chayli ktsas, whatever it is, however we categorize that, right? He doesn't have an infection, but he's not feeling great. Does he have to fast? Now normally on Tisha B'Av, on a chayli ktsas has to fast. Only a real chayla doesn't have to fast on Tisha B'Av, but a chayli ktsas has to fast. Or what about a mu'beres? Regularly, a mu'beres, does a mu'beres have to fast on Tisha B'Av? Yes. Does a mu'beres have to fast on Shar Tanesim? No. Now the lashon of the Mechaber and Ramah is mitzdayer or mitzdayer harbe, but nowadays a mu'beres is going to be mitzdayer or mitzdayer harbe. Typically, mu'beres does not have to fast on a typical fast. On a Tisha B'Av, mu'beres has to fast. A yoledes has to fast, meaning a woman who's nursing. What about this year? Comes the Bir Halacha, and the Bir Halacha says in number 15, V'chein b'chayli ktsas. Someone who is slightly ill, u'me'uberes, and someone who's pregnant, sheish michosh ktsas, who's not feeling great, mutarim lecha, are allowed to eat. And this is Rabbi Kiva Eger. The Bir Halacha quotes Rabbi Kiva Eger. Last week I was by Rabbi Kiva Eger's kever. In the name of the Shvus Yaakov. Why? What's the heter based on? So if you look up the Shvus Yaakov, I have it over here, is in Chelek Gimel Siman Lamed Zayin. Shvus Yaakov makes the Kal V'chomer. You ready for this Kal V'chomer? Madach on a regular fast day. What's the halacha if you make a bris on Shivas B'Tammuz? You allowed to eat or you're not allowed to eat? Not to eat. But what if somebody is pregnant or not feeling great? You have to fast? You don't have to fast. So it's not strong enough it's strong enough to push away a bris, that it won't allow the Baal bris to eat. But a sickness, or even a small sickness, could push away the tainus. Tisha B'Av, that's a nidcha. What's the halacha if you make a bris on Tisha B'Av? Someone who makes a bris on Tisha B'Av, that's, if it's a regular Tisha B'Av, you're not allowed to eat if you make a bris on Tisha B'Av. Yeah, you make the bris during the day and you break your fast at night. But on Tisha B'Av nidcha, you eat on Tisha B'Av. You hear this? If on this year someone is lucky enough to make a bris, the Baal bris eats on Tisha B'Av. You hear this? See if you can work it out. Sandik also. Anybody know of any available Sandikais? Right? Or Mila. Yeah, that's a good one. Learn what to do. You have a couple days to learn how to do it. If you're the Mayal, you're not going to have to fast on a Tisha B'Av Nidcha. What? The guests are not allowed to eat. The Baal bris. How about a See him? Nah, nice try. Right?
No cigar.
If you finish Bavli and Yerushalmi, we'll talk. Okay? But even then, you can't. So the halacha is like this. The halacha is if you make a bris, you're allowed to eat on a Tisha B'Av Nifla. Certainly, if you're muberes or not really feeling well, you're allowed to eat. So listen to this Kal V'chomer. If on a regular fast, on a Shabbos B'Tammuz, where a Baal bris cannot eat, but a muberes could, certainly on a Tisha B'Av Nidcha, where a Baal bris could eat, certainly a muberes could. Now it's interesting. When could the Baal bris eat? Chatzos. But let's think about this Kal V'chomer. If on a regular fast day, when a Baal bris cannot eat at all, but someone who's not feeling well could eat the whole day. Tisha B'Av Nidcha, where the Baal bris could eat at Chatzos, certainly someone who's not feeling well muberes should be able to eat the whole day. But isn't there a rule in Kal V'chomer, Dayoy levam min abedin lios kenidan? If the whole makar, if the whole source is from the Baal bris and he can only eat at Chatzos, maybe someone who's muberes and not feeling well can only eat at Chatzos. No, we're lenient. We're makal. Even though the Kal V'chomer is a little bit faulty, we're lenient and we allow the muberes to eat in the beginning of the day. Fine. Why should or should not a muberes be able to eat on Tisha B'Av? Think of it this way. If Tisha B'Av is Sunday, it's not a nidcha. It's Sunday. It was scheduled for Sunday. But if Tisha B'Av is Shabbos and it just pushed off to Sunday, so then it's a nidcha. Now, based on what we've been learning until now, that we're going like the Rosh, that we view it that Tisha B'Av is l'chachila enacted on Sunday, why would there be any leniency? There shouldn't be any leniency. But Lamaisa, even though it's scheduled Sunday, but it's scheduled Sunday because it couldn't be scheduled on the day it was supposed to be scheduled, so we're able to sort of be lenient on both ends. You see? We're sort of pulling the string on both sides. We're pulling the string that Tisha B'Av comes out on Sunday and there's no Shua Shechal by Tisha B'Av. But we're also being lenient that Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos to some extent that a muberes could break her fast. Yeah, and then Baal bris could eat. True, correct. Next halacha. So that's a fifth nafkamina. Are you allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av?
Not from the Torah. Right? Not from the Torah.
Are you allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av?
From other sources, but not from the Torah.
You're not allowed to. The Gemara says what? That the Torah is asar. We don't learn Torah on Tisha B'Av. What about Erev Tisha B'Av? What about Erev Tisha B'Av? Are you allowed to learn Torah Erev Tisha B'Av? Does anybody know? Does it speak in the Gemara about learning Torah Erev Tisha B'Av? The answer is nowhere in the Gemara does it say one word about Erev Tisha B'Av. It doesn't say anywhere in the Gemara that you're not to learn Erev Tisha B'Av. The Ramah comes with a minhag. Look at number 9. Comes the Ramah, V'noagu shloi lilmod be'erev Tisha B'Av mechatzos ve'elach. The minhag is not to learn Erev Tisha B'Av from chatzos and on. Ki im b'dvarim hamutarim b'Tisha B'Av. Whatever you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av, you can learn Erev Tisha B'Av from chatzos. V'lacheinim chal b'Shabbos. Therefore, if Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, and we're pushing off Tisha B'Av to Sunday, so Shabbos now is what? Erev Tisha B'Av. So now, after Chatzois on Shabbos is like Erev Tisha B'Av. Could you say Pirkei Avos? No. Could you go spaziering around? No, because it's Erev Tisha B'Av. Okay, so Ramah says two chumras that are not mentioned in the Gemara. Number one, there's a minhag not to learn Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzois. Got this? There's a minhag not to learn Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzois. And number two, if Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos and it's pushed off to Sunday, so Shabbos after Chatzois is Erev Tisha B'Av, you don't say Pirkei Avos. Could you learn Daf Yomi? It would seem that you can't learn Daf Yomi according to... No.
Definitely not after Chatzot.
What? Yeah, but with all due respect to your psak, whoever gave you the psak is not the Ramah. The Ramah says you can't.
What's the problem? If the fire was on the 10th, so this is certainly it's okay.
That's the Ramah. The night, well, because we enacted it on the 9th. We're going to see for a moment. The Ramah says you cannot learn Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzois, even if it's on Shabbos.
On Tisha B'Av, I learned boycott, I think we had to eat avelu. But now Shabbos, because it's Shabbos, you learn that.
Yeah, you could learn it. Yeah, you could. I understand. Yeah, that's what the Ramah says. You can only learn what you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av. Says the Mishnah Brura, why are you not allowed to learn Erev Tisha B'Av? Torah misameches halev. So Mishnah Brura says, what's going on over here? Are you allowed to eat on Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzois? Yeah. You're allowed to drink? You're allowed to wash your hands? Of course. Yeah, so all of a sudden, when it comes to Torah, that we're machmer on. Says Mishnah Brura, kol ze eina medina. This is not mamish halacha. The hamut b'Erev Tisha B'Av medina kol hachamisha inuyim turnover. The reason is, you know why you're now to learn? Because all the other things have no alternative. But learning, you have an alternative. You could learn kamsa bar kamsa. Ve'ikar atam yishum du yachal luma dvarim hamutar b'Tisha B'Av. However, says the Mishnah Brura, meharbe achroinim nira shetavsu haminhag hazav le'iralav. Many achroinim maintain this minhag, and they don't challenge it. Why? Da'afilu imchal b'Shabbos. Because even if Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, hiskimu kama achroinim lisnai kamashikos Rama. Many achroinim agree to follow the Rama, not to learn after Chatzois. Okay, so in other words, what Mishnah Berurah is saying is many achroinim endorse this custom that Shabbos Erev Tisha B'Av, or even if that Shabbos is Tisha B'Av, to be careful not to learn after Chatzois. By the way, the Magen Avram says you don't learn the whole day. Wow. You know why you don't learn the whole day? Because it's Tisha B'Av. But what do you mean? You eat. That's Dvarim V'farhesya. But the same way Tasha Shamita is also, learning is also, it's Dvarim Shabbatzina, the Magen Avram says. But we're going to see we don't hold like the Magen Avram.
You're allowed to sing Zmiros?
Depends if you have a good voice or not. You're allowed to sing Zmiros? Yes.
I don't know, if you don't have a good voice, you should be able to.
Right. Right, you chapped. Yes. But are you allowed to sing Zmiros? Yeah. Okay. Ta'afilu imchal b'Shabbos hiskimu kama achroinim l'snai k'mashikos Rama. Omnam, listen carefully. Yesh eza achroinim. There are some achroinim shepiklu ma'id al minhag hazeh, who challenge the custom of not learning Erev Tisha B'Av. Number one, first and foremost, the Marshal. The Marshal says, you know what I think about this minhag of not learning Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzois? I'll tell you what I think. I learn Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzois. Shalom ad ba'atzmai acher Chatzois. Not only that, v'hiter gam la'acherim. The Gra says that the Ramah is a chumra yisera. It's too strict. The Maimar Mordechai writes, he says that not learning Tisha B'Av after Chatzois brings to bittul Torah. Because you're going to tell the guy, learn Kamsa bar Kamsa for the 90 millionth time. I got the story down. How many times am I going to learn Kamsa bar Kamsa? Titus Arash. How many times I have to learn about the fly that went up his nose? Every year, I'm in the middle of learning Erechin, and I have to go learn Kamsa bar Kamsa again. He says, maybe harbe de bittul Torah me Allah lamdim shos rashin limud dvar mov tam b'Tisha B'Av. They ain't all them lamdim al mashali by chafetz. Basically, don't tell me what to learn. Person only learns what they want to learn. You can't, if somebody has to learn something, it's not enjoyable. You know, the Samer Rebbe said, he never forgot anything in his life except for his bar mitzvah pshato. Don't tell somebody what they have to learn. It like ruins everything. Well, you want to be able to learn what you enjoy learning, not something is enforced upon you. Therefore, the Maimon Mordechai is Mekel. Again, we're talking about the custom of the Ramah of not learning Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos. The Kasav Dechein Haya Hu Noyeg. The Maimon Mordechai was Mekel. The Chai Adam says it's a Chumra Yisera. Therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, one who wants to be lenient about learning Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos, we don't throw rotten tomatoes at him. Ein moichen miyadin. Not this year. On a regular Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos, if you want to learn, we're not going to protest. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is not saying you should learn. He's just saying if you can't resist, nish gefarlach. What about this year? Now, the truth is, you could take it both ways this year. Because this year, not only is it Erev Tisha B'Av, it's Tisha B'Av. So if it's Tisha B'Av, like I said, the Magen Avram holds, you're now to learn the whole Shabbos. Magen Avram learns you're now to learn Shabbos. That means no Daf Yomi Shabbos afternoon, no Daf Yomi Shabbos morning, no Daf Yomi Friday night, and if you make an early Shabbos, maybe even no Daf Yomi if you make the early Shabbos. That's the sheet of Magen Avram. Because the Magen Avram says, since we pass on like the Ramah, that Dvarim Shabbat Sinah Noyig, that we're Machmer on Tashmish Shamita. So I understand we're not going to be machmer on the other things because they're public, but learning, nobody knows your own personal business, so you shouldn't learn either. Now, if it's a public shiur, now it becomes Dvarim Shabbat Farhesya, so l'chayra the Magen Avram would allow a Daf Yomi public shiur, because then it becomes Dvarim Shabbat Farhesya. On the other hand, it's Tisha B'Av, so you should be more... Now, on the other hand, you could say, wait a second. Really, Tasha Shamita should be mutter. Why are we machmir? It's a chumra yisera. So we could be machmir and Tasha Shamita, not going to be machmir, not to learn. We're not going to extrapolate from Dvarim Shabbat Sinah to Talmud Torah. And you could. So in other words, the Magen Avram is machmir the whole Shabbos. But you could take it to the other extreme. You could say that, on the other hand, it's not Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is Sunday. It's only Erev Tisha B'Av. Now Erev Tisha B'Av we're machmir after Chatzos, but not if it's Shabbos. Maybe if it's Shabbos it's more lenient. And that's how we hold. We hold not only is Shabbos not Tisha B'Av, it's not even Erev Tisha B'Av. You hear this? Exactly the opposite of the Magen Avram. Meaning we hold so strongly that Tisha B'Av is what day this year? Sunday. And what Shabbos? So we would say, Shabbos, it's Tisha B'Av. No, not only is it not Tisha B'Av, it's only Erev. And Erev on Shabbos is not Erev Tisha B'Av. So therefore, this year, Shabbos, you're allowed to learn after Chatzos. Even those who are machmer like the Ramah, who says what? That we don't learn Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos. That's only on an Erev Tisha B'Av on a regular year. But this year on an Erev Tisha B'Av, we're not machmer like the Ramah. Now, the Noida B'Yehuda learns that even the Ramah only said as Chumrah on Erev Tisha B'Av, but not on Erev Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos. Meaning?
Tisha B'Av, when Tisha B'Av falls on Sunday.
Erev Tisha B'Av, when Tisha B'Av comes out on Sunday, then the Ramah is only Machmir on Shabbos, because then it's really Erev Tisha B'Av, right? But if it's only a fake Erev Tisha B'Av, because it's really Tisha B'Av, then perhaps the Ramah would not be Machmir on after Chatzos. Bottom line is, the Mishnah Berurah comes out that this year, after Chatzos, you're allowed to learn. And you can have your Daf Yomi. So you have your psak, right? Your psak is correct. That you're allowed to learn, bottom line, this, even those who are machmer like the Ramah, not to learn Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos, but that's only on a regular year, not when it's Erev Shabbos. Look in the Mishnah Berurah of Katan Tes. When the Ramah says, therefore, if it falls out on Shabbos, that's even Erev Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos, we don't say Pirkei Avos, because that's like Limud Torah after Chatzos. Before Chatzos, you're allowed to learn even when it comes out on Shabbos. But the Mishnah Berurah says the Taz questions the whole practice of not learning on Shabbos. And he says if you want to learn on Shabbos after Chatzos, you don't lose your schar. Even if Erev Tisha B'Av is Shabbos, certainly if it's Erev Tisha B'Av. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Now remember, what did the Mishnah Berurah say about somebody who wants to learn on a typical Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos? Nishka Ferlach. We're not going to throw tomatoes at you. But what about if it's also Shabbos? Yesh lismoich al zeh achrei da'afilu kishachal b'chol kama achreinim akila. The Mishnah Berurah fully endorses learning this year Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos. On a regular weekday after Chatzos, he says don't protest. This year, what? This year he says it's legitimate. Now, Marv Rabbi say, what does it depend on if you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av that's pushed off to Sunday? What does it depend on? L'chayr, what does it depend on? If we view it, in other words, the Magen Avram learns, you're not allowed to learn on Shabbos. You hear this? The Magen Avram says this Shabbos you can't learn the whole day. The Taz says this Shabbos you can learn the whole day, and we're mako like the Taz. What does it depend on? Depends on exactly the discussion we've had until now. The Magen Avram learns when Tisha B'Av comes out on Shabbos, Tisha B'Av is Shabbos. Elamai, we can't observe it, so we push it off to Sunday. But Tashim Shamita we could observe, so it's Asr. Talmud Torah we could observe, so it's Asr. However, the Taz learns Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos, it doesn't come out on Shabbos, it comes out on Sunday. So therefore, Be'ikr Talmud Torah is mutter. Marv Rabbi said there's a very interesting Chasam Sofer here. Chasam Sofer, look at number 12. Chasam Sofer says, what is the reason for not learning Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos? So the Mishnah Berurah says, Pikudei Hashem Yisharim Mesam Chelev. So the Chasam Sofer has a hard time accepting that. Pikudei Hashem Yisharim Mesam Chelev, but you're allowed to do everything else, so why are you not allowed to learn? Chasam Sofer says like this. He has a very innovative svara of why you're not allowed to learn Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos. He says whatever you learn during the day after Chatzos, your mind is still going to be subconsciously digesting it and processing it in the evening. So by learning Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos, so it's going to cause you to be learning during the evening as well. So it's interesting. The other Isurim, you don't have to be noiheg. Why? Because if you partake of it, if you bathe, if you eat, once the night comes, it's gone already, so it's okay. But when it comes to learning, whatever you're learning during the day, take a look at number 12 in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, Yakarta higiani, sha'al be ishaper lahakal kilas baram Tisha B'Av Shabbos. Are you allowed to give shiurim publicly on Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos? Oiloi. So we know the Magen Avram says you're not allowed to, but he's masupik. What the Magen Avram is masupik about is if it has a din Tisha B'Av, which is Asr Midina B'Talmud Torah, and Dvar M'Shabbat in a Naig, or do we say since it's pushed off, and it's like Erev Tisha B'Av, it's only Asr Mechatzos Ulamala. Now the Chasam Sofer says Agavorcha Tam HaMinog Lo Nisparish. He says, in my opinion, would be the Chomash Shaloi Mid Mechatzos Ve'elach Adayin Machshavtai Olav V'Herhuroi Gabei B'Laila V'Nichnas La'avel Kishu Sameach. So in that case, then even if it comes out on Shabbos, it should be also after Chatzos, because not because of Avelos, it's because of the following night. But Lamaisa, the Chasam Sofer says, since we paskin that Tisha B'Av that comes out on Shabbos is pushed off to Sunday, it's only Erev Tisha B'Av, and then it would be mutter. Bottom line is, regarding this chumrah of not learning Erev Tisha B'Av after Chatzos, this will be the final Maramak. Take a look at number 11. The Bir Halacha quotes the Maimar Mordechai. The Maimar Mordechai does not like the chumrah of the Ramah in any situation. He says that there's no correct reason to aser learning on Shabbos, and when the Ramah writes to be machmer because you can learn Dvar Mamutarim, he says the Maimar Mordechai, he doesn't agree with that. He basically argues that you can't force people into learning anything specific, and the Maimar Mordechai goes so far as to say, had I not been afraid of my friends, I would have said you're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av itself. He says, what are people doing on Tisha B'Av? People spend hours selecting what kind of Danish they're going to eat when Tisha B'Av is over. You're going to have a cheese Danish, you're going to have a blueberry Danish. That's mutter? That you're allowed to do? If you're allowed to do that, then you're allowed to learn Takva Koyin with the Shev Shmaitza. He says if people are strolling around the the streets, and people are watching things, and people are doing all kinds of things, in his opinion, you for sure could learn. Don't Chazal say, doesn't the Yerushalmi say, that what's the reason you're not to do malacha on Chol HaMoed? What's the reason you're not to do malacha? It's because so people could eat, drink, and be oisek b'Torah. But if people are just going out and going on their merry way, says the Yerushalmi, really malacha should be mutter on Chol HaMoed. Well, by the same token, the Maimon Mordechai does not endorse the custom of not learning Erev Tisha B'Av. But Lamaisa, as the Mishnah Berurah said, Erev Tisha B'Av, the Ramah says not to learn after Chatzos. If you don't want to observe it, in Moichin B'Yadoi. But the conclusion of the Mishnah Berurah is this year, where Erev Tisha B'Av is Shabbos, we go like the Taz, that this year Shabbos is not Tisha B'Av, Sunday is Tisha B'Av. Shabbos is now Erev Tisha B'Av, Shechali Yos B'Shabbos, and L'Halacha, we allow learning up until the end of the day. Rabbi said we should be Zoiche, the Tzoyim HaChamishi, Yiyah, L'Beis Yehuda, L'Sasayin, L'Simcha, L'Mayadim Tovim.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.